Welcome to today's hot topic, and today we're talking about dealing with business setbacks. Um, Quite often, businesses are faced with very challenging times and decisions that need to be made, and that's when true leadership is typically shown. There's never been a better example of this than our recent experiences with COVID. And business owners, whether they be large or small, have all had to take a step back and make some really key decisions for their business based on what was happening individually for them and also across the broader community. So it's dealing with those setbacks, not only COVID, but the general day-to-day setbacks that happen in your business that's critical. So we're going to look a little bit at dealing with setbacks and some of the ways that business owners react and how they can build resilience within their business and also bring their team along for the journey, because a lot of people, especially just business owners, they take a lot of that upon their own shoulders. And that's where a lot of business stress and quite often business mental health issues come from, is business owners feel that they're alone, feel that they're the only ones that can get involved in that decision. They typically don't reach out for help until it's too late. And if any of that rings true for you, then feel free to reach out. So the first thing I wanted to look at is what happens when the shit hits the fan, if we can put it that way. Now, in many businesses, when a problem hits, the immediate reaction is to put on a face and to try and go into damage control. And that's one of the worst things that can actually happen, because this game face mentality can really sting. So quite often it's just something that should be ingrained in humans, but it's not. We actually go the opposite, is that when something bad happens, we should actually face it front on. And it's that fight or flight response that quite often ends up in flight for business owners. We simply run from it, as opposed to taking it head on and dealing with it. So the first thing is to actually admit that there's an issue, admit that there's a setback. So the head in the sand approach is one of the worst things that I see with business owners, because once we get too far down the track and the head's been put in the sand for too long, then there's not a lot of corrective action we can take. If you get to it early, then you can deal with it. It's a bit like a major health issue, like a cancer or any other disease. If we can get it diagnosed early and we can attack it then we've got the best chance of survival or management of that setback. The second is also the tendency to not get correct advice because it's too expensive, or we can battle through this ourselves. It'll be okay. We'll be able to get through it ourselves, or we'll take a recommendation from somebody who's cheap. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a good result come from a service that's dirt cheap. It's typically poor results for everybody all round, and it typically ends up costing more than the cheap anyway. So you're better off sourcing the best advice that you can get when you get a particular setback. So moving beyond that, I want to move beyond the positive thinking phase as the third element. Now, I see a lot of memes. There's been a lot of 1,001 books written about, going way back to positive thinking books. And one of the problems of positive thinking is that we sometimes ignore the reality of the situation. So all for being optimistic about a situation, but you also need to be realistic. So when you're facing one of these setbacks in business, you need to really hone in on what the setback's about, face it front on, as I said, get good advice, But don't think that all of a sudden the sun's going to shine because you're thinking positive. We need to be realistic about what's happening, and we need to put things in place to deal with the setback, not simply think that we're going to manifest some amazing thing by wishing upon a star. It doesn't happen. And all of this malarkey that's been put out there of recent times of, let's put it out to the universe and it'll come back tenfold. Well, you can put it out to the universe all you like when you've got a business setback, but the realistic view of it is that unless you actually take some action to deal with what's happening at that time, then you can put it out to the universe all you like and nothing's going to change. So I'm a bit of a hard ass on this sort of thing. I know there's an alternate view, and we could take a really philosophical and dreamy and hippie approach to it. But I believe that if you've got a setback, the worst thing you can do is not take action and to hope that something magically is going to happen. It really is an important thing that you need to get your head around. And I believe that it's one of the main sources of stress and angst within business owners, is that we've been fed all of these different philosophies and books and angles to try and make this a really soft approach. Sometimes you need to take the hard approach. And without taking that hard approach and being really edgy on that hard approach in your business, then some of these setbacks, you'll just crumble under it. So I want to move on to talk about how you get your team involved in a setback and the effects that it can actually have on you if you don't get your team involved in what's going on. So let's assume that you have some sort of a setback in terms of maybe loss of a key customer. Now, we could put a nice paint job over that and everything's fine, it's all the customer's fault, etc., etc. And the team go, oh yeah, okay, that's fine, and the team move on, and then this just starts to be a recurring theme. Now, when you get into that type of an example and the team is not being brought into the issues that are actually happening, the stress of the owner is magnified. The stress of the owner becomes something that they're just keeping to themselves. They're not spreading it across the rest of the organisation. Not that you want to spread the stress, but you need to spread the setback so as we can all help deal with it, rather than just the one person at the top trying to do it in a small business. So bringing your team in on things when you've got this game face is the difficulty that I see. I see small business owners just take so much upon their own shoulders because of a fear factor or a shame factor to take it to their team. So you really need develop a transparent culture within your business. And the more that you can develop that transparent culture within your business, the better off that you will be. What happens if you're simply just causing unnecessary stress upon your team? Well, there's a way to actually deal with that and do it the appropriate way. It's called communication. And having the correct culture and communication within your structure is critical to that.